3 innocent home videos with heartbreaking backstories. This seemingly wholesome video is from a wife filming her husband Chris playing with their daughters. Just a few months later, Chris Watts would go on to strangle his wife Shannon and smother their 2 daughters Bella and Cece before disposing of their bodies in oil tanks near his work. This home video shows 2-year-old James Bulger just before he was abducted, tortured, and murdered by 2 10-year-old boys. They grabbed him when his mother wasn't watching, took him to a train track where his body was found mutilated 2 days later. This footage shows the Sexton family when their children were just toddlers. Over the years following these innocent videos, their father, Eddie Lee Sexton, would marry his daughters, have children with them, and force his sons to murder people. Deadliest disasters in human history, Part 1. In 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds into its flight, killing all 7 crew members aboard. The astronauts actually lived through the initial explosion and survived for nearly 3 minutes before they died on impact with the water. In 1184, a group of nobles gathered in a room in the Church of St. Peter above the latrine pit of the monks. All of a sudden, the floor collapsed due to their combined weight, causing 60 nobles to fall to their death into a pool of poop and sewage. In 1893, gifts were being passed out at a magic show in Victoria Hall. Over 1,000 kids tried to force themselves down a narrow staircase that led to a single door that opened inward. Only 1 child at a time could pass through, causing 183 children to be crushed to death. Seemingly innocent paintings with sinister backstories, Part 1. This disturbing self-portrait was painted by American serial killer and sex offender John Wayne Gacy. He was known as the Killer Clown and assaulted and murdered at least 33 young boys. After being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, artist William Utermohlen created a series of self-portraits to track the progression of his disease. And as you can see from the paintings, over time he began to forget what his own face looked like. This normal-looking painting of a bird in front of a sunset has a surprisingly dark artist behind it. If you look in the bottom right corner, you will see the signature of infamous cult leader and murderer Charles Manson, who was charged with the murders of 9 people in 1971. New things and shit. If you went to the Bronx Zoo recently, you might have been lucky enough to come across a gorilla giving oral sex to another gorilla in front of a crowd of traumatized children. You know, when I was a kid, they would just throw their poop at the glass. Kraft Macaroni and Cheese and Van Leeuwen Ice Cream have teamed up to create a new mac and cheese flavored ice cream. This is quite literally every lactose intolerant person's worst nightmare. A Boston high school was recently forced to use a bus with a stripper pole and several neon lights for a field trip. The school district was experiencing a school bus shortage, so the students received a much sexier option. Scientists in Egypt recently discovered a new animal species in the Sahara Desert. This whale-sized sea creature had 4 legs and a huge mouth and was said to live 43 million years ago. Marshall Mathers, or Eminem, is opening up a restaurant called Mom's Spaghetti. You know, I'm not sure if that's the best idea, considering the first thing I think of when I hear that is vomit. Life-saving advice from movies that can actually kill you. So, according to Hollywood, if someone is passed out with no pulse, you should straddle them, give them mouth-to-mouth, and beat on their chest like a goddamn gorilla until eventually they come back to life and everything is completely normal. Now, I'm not saying CPR doesn't work, but it only works like 2 to 4% of the time, and when properly performed, you usually end up cracking the person's ribcage. You know, death sounds like a pretty good option as opposed to someone literally shattering my ribs and slobbering down my throat. I feel like this one should be pretty obvious, but taking a bullet to the arm or leg does not just make you bleed a little bit and leave you able to fight off enemies completely unfazed. About half the time you get shot in the arm, it literally never works. Ever again. But if you do get shot anywhere, you better hope and pray that it's your ass. Tons of fat, no major arteries, you'll be fine. I mean, especially if you're this guy. He would definitely be fine. Life-saving advice from movies that can actually kill you. So, according to Hollywood, if someone is passed out with no pulse, you should straddle them, give them mouth-to-mouth, and beat on their chest like a goddamn gorilla until eventually they come back to life and everything is completely normal. Now, I'm not saying CPR doesn't work, but it only works like 2 to 4% of the time, and when properly performed, you usually end up cracking the person's ribcage. You know, death sounds like a pretty good option as opposed to someone literally shattering my ribs and slobbering down my throat. I feel like this one should be pretty obvious, but taking a bullet to the arm or leg does not just make you bleed a little bit and leave you able to fight off enemies completely unfazed. About half the time you get shot in the arm, it literally never works. Ever again. But if you do get shot anywhere, you better hope and pray that it's your ass. Tons of fat, no major arteries, you'll be fine. I mean, especially if you're this guy. He would definitely be fine. Facts that you probably didn't know that one day could save your life. Part 14. Ticks are way deadlier than people say they are. Lyme disease can quite literally stop your heart. If you get bitten, take it off immediately and go see a doctor. If you hear a baby crying outside, keep your door shut and dial 911. It's a trap. Drowning doesn't look like drowning. When someone is drowning, they rarely cry out, can't wave their arms around, and will often just bob in and out of the water while gasping for air. If you're trying to see if a mirror is two-sided, put your nail against the glass. If there's no gap between your nail and the reflection, run. If someone is stumbling around and sounds drunk but hasn't had any alcohol, ask them to smile. If one side of their face is drooping, get them to the hospital, they're having a stroke. There's a monument in Georgia that functions as a calendar, clock, and a compass. It also has instructions on it in different languages on how to rebuild society after an apocalypse. Weirdest world records that will make your skin crawl, Part 3. Gary Turner, a sideshow act from the UK, holds the world's stretchiest skin. He has a rare medical condition that affects his connective tissues, allowing him to stretch his skin in extreme ways. A rescue kitty from the UK is confirmed to have the world's loudest purr of any domestic cat. Merlin is capable of purring at 67.8 decibels, about as loud as a vacuum cleaner. California painter Nick Stobarrel, aka The Lick, has the world record for the longest tongue, measuring a staggering 3.97 inches. You don't think that's impressive? 4 inches is long, right? Joel Migler from Germany has more flesh tunnels on his body than anyone else in the world. He has 11 tunnels all over his face, including his nose and lips, but his largest tunnels are on his cheeks. The female world record for the most orgasms in an hour is 134. The male world record is a gargantuan 16. And the record for the most liked video on TikTok is 53 million. So like this video and let's beat that record. Deadly pets that turned on their owners. For her 60th birthday, an Australian woman named Pam Weaver received a pet camel from her husband Noel. Later, the camel attempted to mate with Pam by knocking her over and laying on top of her, killing Pam in the process. Travis the chimp was a famous TV personality featured in commercials for Coca-Cola and Old Navy. However, in 2009, Travis brutally attacked and disfigured a close family friend, Charlene Nash, resulting in the chimp being shot to death. In summer of 2009, a couple was charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter after their pet Burmese python slithered out of its cage and strangled their 2-year-old daughter to death. In 2005, a South African man named Marius Els adopted a baby hippo after rescuing him from a river. They lived together for 6 years until the hippo dragged Els into that same river and ate him alive.